Hello, my fellow residents. So, I just went to Fan Expo 2016 and Sony invited me to their booth to try out the PlayStation VR for an extended experience. Now, all said and done, I've tried the PlayStation VR at 2 different events now, and at both events, I've kind of combined all that time played to about 30 to 40 minutes, and I gotta say that I think I have a much better experience and handle on what the PlayStation 4 VR world is all about. So, here we go. So the first game I got to try out on PlayStation VR was Eve Valkyrie. Now, Eve Valkyrie is a space flight game where you're in a combat scenario, you're going into space, you're shooting at a bunch of things, and it is pretty amazing looking. But I got a problem with this. Now, most space flight games, and especially this demo here, put you in a situation where a bunch of things are going on. There's these big ships, a big battle going on, you feel like you're thrown into the event. And of course it's a demo, so they have to do something really impressive for you to get your head in the game really quick. But one of the problems I had right away was that I never felt like anything I was doing was having any influence on the world around me. Now of course it's just a demo, but this is something I see happening in a lot of space combat games. You know in Star Wars when Luke Skywalker is going down the trenches of the Death Star and he shoots like a rocket or a bomb or whatever into that little safety security area and then it blows up the Death Star? That feels like Luke Skywalker was instrumental in the destruction of the Death Star. That never happens in this demo. You never feel like you're instrumental in anything. If anything, you feel like you might actually be accidentally shooting people that are on your side, which really sucked. There's a lot of movement, a lot of 360-degree angles being turned all over the place, and for me, I started to get motion sickness. I hate this. I've been playing the HTC Vive for quite a while now, and I never feel like I get motion sickness in that. I have actually sat there and I've played the HTC Vive for a standing scenario actually in a room scale environment for about 2 or 3 hours in one go, and I never felt sick. But when you play the HTC Vive, it is that room scale experience, so you can be in a room and you're walking around in real time and your controllers are one-to-one with where your hands are and everything. That doesn't happen with the PlayStation VR as of yet. Now the PlayStation VR does use Move controllers, but unfortunately every time I attempted to try the PlayStation Move controllers, I was always in a situation where they just didn't work in the specific room I was in. Now that's mostly due to the fact that there was really bright lights and they were affecting the way that the camera actually registered the balls on the PlayStation Move controller and stuff, so I can't say that's going to happen in your own home environment, which really excites me because I want to be able to have that experience at home and give you a better impression of what that's like. For now though, when I was in a bright room with a lot of bright lights, those controllers didn't work, so I couldn't play any games with them, which really sucked. But with the PlayStation 4 controller, there's a sense of tactical feedback that you get from feeling the vibration and stuff like that that works really well. Now, the HTC Vive controllers have the exact same rumble motor stuff in the controllers themselves, and you actually do feel the little tension of rods and like just little tiny things, vibrations of guns being fired with your controllers that are really good and responsive for how you feel. As weird as it is, I don't really think vibration controllers really matter much when you're playing with most modern games, but when you're doing motion games, when you're doing games in VR, it's kind of important to have that kind of sense of something clicking or just moving a little bit in your hands. And those slight vibrations you feel in the HTC Vive controller work really well, but I can't tell you what that's like in the PlayStation VR headset yet simply because, well, none of the experiences I've tried really made use of that. However, back to Eve Valkyrie, it's a flight game, a lot of stuff goes on, I started to feel motion sick very quick, and unfortunately, there wasn't a lot there to basically say, hey, this is really cool. It just felt like a very plain experience flying in space, which is good for some people, but for me, I think I need VR to do something more than what my TV can already do. RIG's Mechanized Combat League. Now in this game, you are set inside of some big mech and you're just controlling it and you're playing kind of like a sporting event where you have to do some things. I really wish I could give you a more one-to-one experience, but it was just so hectic and crazy that I really didn't know what I was supposed to be doing in the game. Unfortunately, but I did get to play it a bit and I got to experience what it was like to actually be in a mech combat thing. You're shooting at people that are in the game with you. You're going around trying to score on their net or goal or something like that. And it really was trying to be a sporting event with mechanized armor and stuff like that, which was really cool. But unfortunately, I couldn't really tell you what the rules of the game were because the game was really poor at kind of telling you what you had to do. Unfortunately, when I'm in that seat and you've got the headset on and your earphones on, I had the person beside me trying to tell me what to do, but I couldn't hear him because I've got headsets on and I've got all this stuff is going on. I can't hear or see anything outside in the real world. So while he's desperately trying to tell me what to do, I can't hear him. So that's something that PlayStation VR, HTC Vive, all the VR headsets really do to you, which is just basically lock you in a completely different experience where in the real world, there could be a fire and you wouldn't know unless you smelt it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of stuff that VR is really supposed to be good at, putting you in that other world. And PlayStation VR is incredibly good at that. He could have told me anything. He literally could have been sitting there insulting me directly to my face. I wouldn't have known. The volume was incredibly loud. The scenes were incredibly bright. And I felt like I was just locked into the experience. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to really figure out what I had to do in the game. The movement, though, of the character that you are is really pronounced. When you jump up really high in the air and you look down, you get sick. Because once again, you're moving, but your body isn't actually moving, so your brain just starts to freak out because you're not actually doing the movements that your eyes are seeing. So it can really screw with you. Whenever I was really high up and looked down, I got sick. Whenever I moved around in like weird positions and stuff, I got sick. Pretty much the entire time I was playing this game, I felt very sick and awkward and weird. And it sucks because with the HTC Vive and the certain experience that I've done with that, you don't feel sick. You never feel like you're going to throw up. You never feel the motion sickness that you really do feel with PlayStation VR. And I absolutely hate that. But once again, that's what this game was all about. And I really wasn't familiar with it, so it just kind of didn't work all that well for me. But the next game, though, I know very well because I played it back when it originally came out on the Dreamcast, and that is Rez. Now, the Rez demo I played is just one of the levels you would have seen in the Dreamcast version of the game or in the PlayStation 2 version of the game. It's got really good graphics, a lot of bright visuals and stuff like that. It's really, really cool looking, but once again, you're getting a lot of movement that you're not actually doing in the game. For instance, there's this one part where there's a boss that's kind of coming close to you, and when you used to play the game, you really couldn't like move all the way around and all that stuff. At least you didn't have that degree of freedom. But in this game, you're able to look behind you and see things that are going on behind you. And it gets a little awkward because you kind of have to do this and then go back and keep steady and try and keep focused on everything you're seeing. You're aiming with the VR headset, not with the actual thumbsticks or anything, but the thumbsticks will move your vision if you move them. And after a while, once again, started to feel sick. I'm really, really not excited about that. Every game I've played on PlayStation VR gives me motion sickness, and I don't know why it's so bad. I've had a bunch of people tell me when 3D games first started coming out, especially first-person games, they started to feel motion sickness like they'd never felt before. And I don't know if this is something I'm going to get used to as time goes on, but every experience I have tried with the PlayStation VR always makes me feel physically awkward and weird, and I really don't like it. I assumed when I went to go play the HTC Vive for the very first time, I would feel sick. I thought I would just feel completely bad. But I don't, because the one-to-one nature of room scale works really well in your experience. You feel like you're actually moving because you actually are moving in the room. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to fix this with the PlayStation VR, but essentially what I have seen so far is telling me that they need to make experiences where you're sitting down and not moving. Now, in HTC Vive, I've had experiences where you're sitting down on a chair and you're moving your character with like some joystick or something like that. And in those experiences, I do also feel sick as well. And the whole reason that is happening is because, seriously, you're not moving, but your eyes are seeing something move, so your brain just gets lost in it. And that's essentially where the motion sickness comes from. HTC Vive solves that by the room scale thing and by having games designed around that concept of not actually, moving when you're not moving. So there's a thing that they've done there, but PlayStation, I really feel like, hasn't fixed that. The PlayStation VR is really good at a number of things. The PlayStation 4 controller is as good as it's ever been. You don't get lost when you're holding it, and it's kind of comfortable. You know exactly where all the buttons are without having to look down at it. The headset itself is the best headset I have used so far. It feels really good and comfortable. It feels like it floats in front of your face. The actual style of it and everything is really good. The screen is really nice. Even though it's supposed to be the cheapest of the lot, the resolution, everything about it just looks as good as the HTC Vive does or the Oculus Rift. I'm really impressed by that stuff. But all that being said, it's the games that need to be good on this thing. And it doesn't matter how good the headset itself is, and believe me, it's really, really nice. It's just that you don't ever feel one-to-one like you're in these games as soon as the motion sickness starts to happen. At every point, you always feel like you're sitting down. You always feel like you're in some sat experience, and I'm just really not enjoying that too much. Now, obviously, when the PlayStation VR headset has been released and we get one here, we can try it out a lot more and get a more decent impression of what it's supposed to do. But I really don't know if they're going to be able to solve this issue. They need to make games where you're not moving. They need to make games that focus on specific feature sets of game design. Like a great example is on HTC Vive. There's a whole bunch of first-person shooting games that have transporters in them. So you look to an area, you aim to it, and you click, and you transport in that area instead of actually moving that way. And when you do that, it gives you that immersion of moving in a game without the actual physical movement of moving forward. That kind of needs to be addressed. I don't know how many people have these problems with motion sickness in games, and up until this point, I've never had motion sickness playing any video game ever in my life, including when I was a kid in the 90s playing those really big old VR headsets that they used to have at arcades. I played those and I never felt sick. There's something about this one where the visual quality is so high that it tricks your brain into actually thinking like you're there, and that's where you get the whole kind of offset sickness feeling. It's so strange because I still think that the PlayStation VR headset is most likely going to win this generation. I really do. As weird as it is, that whole experience is so good at doing so much, but the games, I just don't think they're on the level of what HTC Vive has right now. I feel like if we get to a point where the HTC Vive is not getting a lot of really good first-party releases or anything like that from Valve, we might see the PlayStation VR kind of jump up. The PlayStation VR is most likely going to be the system that everyone gets when it comes to VR headsets, simply because it's the cheapest option there. We did a little podcast on The Hook where we talked about this in the past, but I still believe this. The HTC Vive is a really cool experience, but the price pushes people away. So much so that the HTC Vive that I actually have, I'm borrowing, it's not actually one that I own. If I owned one, it would have cost me over $1,000 to get, which is insane for any kind of peripheral for a video game. Remember, this isn't a console. This isn't something that will play the games. This is just the in-between piece of technology that you buy. I don't think people are going to want to do that. With the PlayStation VR, at least the price is so low that people can get into it at a very cheap price, respectively, compared to the other headsets that are out there. Look, I'll say this. The PlayStation VR headset itself, the hardware, everything about that works really well. The controllers, when the lights aren't on, work really well. All that stuff that they're doing is incredibly cheap, but my God, it feels just like the really expensive guy stuff. The problem, though, I'm finding is in the game designs. It feels like they're trying to make games set for monitors or TVs, but not games for VR headsets yet. All the experiences I tried are either remodeled experiences from older games or just games you would have seen work anywhere on anything. We need distinct VR possibilities, distinct VR games for this platform to actually work. And I don't know if Sony gets that yet, but I think when this whole VR thing comes out and people are actually buying them, I think developers are going to quickly learn what people dislike and what people like. Because the PlayStation VR headset isn't really there for people to try out all the time. There was a whole bunch of people playing it at the PlayStation thing that I was at Fan Expo, and a whole bunch of people there, I could tell when they stood up that they were just kind of a little wobbly and they didn't really know where they were, and that sucked. I think that we've got something really special with this, and I think that Sony knows they've got something special with this. And if they can get the right games out, I think that they're going to be able to take the entire VR market completely by storm and offer an experience that is unrivaled by anyone else. As long as that experience isn't room scale, because Valve completely owns that market now.